I'm excited that we have Judge J. Kent Adams as our speaker today. He has been everything from a founding father of the Houston Northwest Chamber of Commerce. He has been actively a part of this community for as long as I remember. And the stuff that's on the website says, but that's not the important, to me that's the better stuff. Judge Adams was appointed by Harris County Commissioners Court on March 1, 2001 as the presiding judge of Harris County Justice of the Peace Court, Precinct 4, Position 1. Elected to the Justice of the Peace Court, Position 4. Position 1 to complete an unexpired term ending December 31, 04. He was re-elected for a four-year term in March 04. And Judge Adams was re-elected without opposition in 08 and re-elected in 12 for a four-year term. He's married to Pauline D. Adams and has four adult children and 12 grandchildren. He's beating us. Please welcome Judge J. Kent Adams.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a real pleasure to be here, and especially in this. I've never been inside this edifice. I saw the temple to Fred Windisch when it was built. Where is Fred? Is Fred here? Oh, there's Fred right there. But they told me this is 1 square foot larger than yours.
We just added on.
No, it's a great pleasure to be here, obviously, to see this many people that are in trouble. The thing that I want to follow up on this story is those 4 or 5 Beta Kappas that knocked over the store yesterday. One of them was brought in for magistration yesterday evening. I was about to leave, and they called and said they were coming, and I said, my policy always is with the police, anytime, anywhere. I stop trials, I stop anything. And magistrate, out of county, in county, juveniles, various other magistrates. The reason is I pay a lot of taxes, like you do, and I want them back on the street. And I don't want them sitting around in my courtroom waiting for 2 or 3 hours to get a magistrate or whatever the case may be. So as a result, that's how we do that, and they usually it's the Texas Rangers or DPS that calls and says, will you hold up, I've got a hot one. You know, they just picked up on the highway. The magistrate, sure, I'll wait right here, it'll be about an hour, okay. 9 o'clock at night, I'm still sitting there, waiting. And so finally I decided, I guess they're not gonna do it. And come to find out, I don't know whether he shot him or what he did with him. But in any event, he didn't show up. So it's a situation that does exist. Let me give you a kind of a gloss review of what a Justice of the Peace Court is, which is frankly your first level of involvement with law enforcement or the adjudication system per se. Ours is usually covering civil matters up to $10,000. We have misdemeanor crimes, that means non-jailable. That doesn't mean if you don't pay your fine, you don't go to jail. But in any event, they're non-jailable. In that particular endeavor, we also have a bunch of other ancillary things that you may not be aware of that the JPs do. I always call it kind of the public cleanup is what we do. It's everything that the county and the district courts don't like to do. And so we pick up everything, including, and you may be surprised, not only, as I've mentioned to you, the civil end of it, up to $10,000. A part of that civil is FEDs, forcible entry and detainers. They have to do with both personal homes, residences, commercial, which I'll explain in just a moment what is involved there. But in this civil too, we also have a lot of requirements in connection with what we call seizures. Now, this is becoming a bigger and bigger thing on my docket. And let me explain what my docket is. I just had the computers run it last night. We've had 104,951 cases filed last year. That's through December 31st. That's down from 120. So it was 120 last year, and it's down from that to 104, which I'm not complaining. We also turn over to the various authorities, both the Texas State and Harris County, $7,016,062. So it's not a small business deal as far as running the JP. You have 33 employees. And in those 33 employees, you also have to maintain all of the federal and state requirements from the standpoint, excuse me, of everything from sexual harassment all the way down to their various and sundry benefits that you have to maintain and keep up with. I am blessed, and I will be the first person to tell you blessed, with the greatest group of people that I've ever really had the pleasure. I've run companies. I've run a law firm with 5 lawyers in it for 31 years. I've been in a lot of those situations, but this is a great collection. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I thought for sure when I took this over, I would see a lot of people standing around on rakes inside, inside the office. I didn't have really a high opinion of many of the government facilities and the people until I got into it, saw what they did, saw what they required to do, and also what they have to be maintained to keep educated. Because my theory in running the court, and this is I think most JPs, I hope, is we don't run it like governmentals, at least mine is. It's run like a business. It's run like a business from the standpoint of you train them and pay them. I don't like excess body, and as a result of that, we're 11 under what we're allocated right now in our court to have. But the people like it, they're trained, and they're paid. And also what has happened is the help we have from our constable, Ron Hickman. Ron, and by the way, is right now, say a little prayer for him, he's in the FBI Academy right now. And I told him, I said, have you taken total leave of your senses? But in any event, he's for it, he's going for it, and he's going to be there, what is it, 3 months?
3.5.
3.5 months?
Yeah, he's still driving, actually.
He's still driving to get there?
3 days of driving.
Oh, really? Well, pray for him anyway. But his particular office and mine has been really unusual from the standpoint of working together. The reason is most of your JPs, a lot of them, can't stand the sight of their constables, which doesn't make any sense to me. They are so instrumental in each other's lives that it's unfathomable. But he's a very advanced person from the standpoint of his operation in connection with IT. And as a result of that, we have benefited from that. We've done joint ventures with our chief clerk, who unfortunately has been there 38 years and is retiring February the 28th. And between that, we'll be the first JP court, be a paperless court in Harris County. So this not only saves you a lot of money, it saves us a lot of time from the standpoint of fiddling with papers. And that's always been a problem with mine when I see how many times. Jill, remember how I used to say, how many times do you touch that paper, girl? Then I want it reduced to at least 50%. And then we're going to get processes done. Because this takes time and the rest. But in any event, that's something that is going to be incredibly important, especially with the advent of your additional populations that are coming into this area. You better be ready for it. Not only Exxon has increased their number of people, they've increased by another 1,300 people from the 10,000 they had. All the development up and down 249 now, with the various drilling companies going in, and also the various other developments that we had. So what has that all got to do with the JP Court? It's got a lot to do with the JP Court. And that is they all got kids. They all got kids. And those kids are getting into situations, and you know, I'm sure 1,000 years ago they were saying the same thing. But the number of children that I see in this court has been pretty exponential until just recently. And the reason that is Senate Bill 393, which the captain and I have talked about several times, which was introduced by the Texas Senate. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, which was Senator Whitmire, was voted down by the governor. And this one slipped in. Now what is this one? This one has to do with the fact that these police are totally, I think, strangulated from the standpoint of writing tickets in schools. I'm talking about for assaulting teachers, assaulting each other, cursing, carrying alcohol, controlled substances into the schools, damaging the schools, thieving from each other and the teachers. All of these particular type and nature of offenses used to wind up here. What happens, I'm talking about in my court, but what has happened, and I don't know what your political leanings are, but I don't know what the, pardon expression, the hell they were thinking about when they put this bill in from the standpoint of putting the whole onus now back on the school districts. Now that was true when we had school districts with maybe 2,000 people in them, where they handled their own with the board. Y'all remember how many got paddled with the board? You bet. Mine, I even had a name for it, Wendy. But in any event, the one that was wheeling it on me was Dan Hart, All Southwest Conference tight end for Rice. He was my football coach, and Lord have mercy, just thinking about it makes me puffy. But what happens in connection with these kids and their violations, they start thinking that, first of all, they're toothless. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what they think.
Call it what it is.
Because the programs that were introduced is they now have to set up, the school, have to set up a regimen from the standpoint of how they're going to handle well, first of all, the redemption of the child, whatever program they're going to have for purposes of instructing them and trying to get them back on their, you know, I thought the schools were there, at least when I went, to teach you, not to raise your kids. And as a result, they're not getting it at home, I assure you. So as a result, they act out in these schools, and I hear it all the time. Well, she's perfectly all right at home, but they become a wild animal when they get in the schools. And I try to explain to them that's a public place. Why don't you go try that in the lobby of International Airport? Please go over there and start calling each other whatever you're calling each other, or fighting, or stealing, or whatever your case may be, and find out how fast you're in a holdover cell. But in any event, what has happened with these schools is this particular statute prescribed that all of this is going to be maintained and handled by the school districts, and then they'll be given some kind of a contract, I assume, to sign. Then the enforcement of that contract, the redemption coming back in, finding out how you're progressing, and various other things, is also the responsibility of the school. And then when the school finds a secondary, normally, offense, then they have the choice to call him to write tickets. And then those tickets come into my court. Now heretofore, they were trained to look at this situation to see how they could handle it internally, which is what should be done if they can. But by the same token, when you have some of these egregious offenses that we see, that they wrote the tickets and went right on into at least my court. Now, my court is known for juveniles. We handle more juvenile courts than any other court in the state of Texas. it kind of wears on you. I don't think I look bad for 35, do you? But Jill worked in the juvenile section for more years. That's why he had to retire so young. But in any event, she did a great job while she was there. And we appreciate it very much, Jill. Let's go through a couple of things. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of details, but I do want you to know what these school police departments are going through right now. And from the standpoint of enforcement, because as I say, they walk in or they're called in or they're just cruising through and they see something in the classroom. I'm assuming unless it's life-threatening or something of that sort, of course, then it's up to the teacher to file a complaint. Or I'm sure, are they allowing you to do internal complaints too?
Not at this time.
No? I'm sorry, but it's when you've been in this 13 years working with these kids, and these guys, I guarantee you, stay busy. And then they're hogtied like they are right now. And then you have various and sundry teachers that feel, I'm not here to raise your kid. I'm here to teach them. Not to try and make a human out of an animal. And unfortunately, we got too many animals running around in there. So as a result, our filings on juveniles, they're non-existent everywhere else. Ours are down probably 50%, if not more. So what has happened though is legislature in their infinite wisdom decided we also can handle now occupational license hearings. That's where you've had so many DWIs, you've had so many tickets that they run 7 pages single-spaced, are trying to get a license, a temporary license, so you can go to and from work. Well, I take this very seriously because I realize you need to go to work, support your family and various other things. But by the same token, they're extremely time-consuming and investigatory from the standpoint of finding out. But this is something new added to our basket. You may not know that in other parts of the state, the JPs, not only, we do it here too, in fact we could in Harris County, we do tow hearings, not your right toe or left toe, but where you're towed from an apartment project illegally, or you're towed from Astrodome, boy that dates me, from some public place, and you think it was illegal or it wasn't a handicap or whatever the case may be. And then you have an opportunity to spend time with the best Houston tow truck drivers and people who are trying to get their cars back. So this is a part of it. We also have mental hearings. Just the piece make up the mental hearing board of Harris County. And that is to determine whether or not this person has capacity and is not an endangerment to himself or herself or the public. And of course they hear a lot of testimony. Thank goodness I am not on that. They gave me mercy because we're the largest court in the state of Texas now. And I don't have to be on that board. That means driving downtown, having these hearings and driving back. We also have the pleasure of going out and look at dead bodies. We have a coroner in this county. So thank goodness we don't have to do that, but that could change momentarily. From the standpoint of going out, making sure that it's my friend Purtle from the DPS always talked about it when he had a brand new JP out there. And she came out to see it in her nightgown. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, somewhere in Middle Texas. And she climbed out of the car and said, Purtle, what is it? He said, well, we got a real cold one, ma'am. If you knew Purtle, he talks like this. And he says, well, what do I do, Purtle? She said, well, first of all, you go look at the body. And she said, well, he says, it's a DRT right there. And she says, what's a DRT? Dead right there. So she has to go over and examine and make sure, take the vital signs and various other things to make sure that this person is dead. Thank goodness in Harris County we got a coroner, because I don't do dead bodies. I've seen enough of those. All right, let's get into a couple of things here real quick. From the standpoint of your civil, we have had a recent new publication of rules in connection with just the peace. The Supreme Court, in their infinite wisdom, republished all of our rules in connection with civil. In many instances, it's been better. And in some instances, it's still up in the air. But these particular rules are very, very specific. They are new, they're brand new, and certainly various and sundry judges have had some problems with them from time to time. But in any event, those particular civil cases now include, and most of the attorneys haven't caught up yet with them, to be perfectly honest with you. I had a law firm for 31 years. So it's a situation, and I frankly never tried a case in JP court. It was always in county, district, or federal. But to get into JP is a different world. And from the standpoint of, because it's built for the citizen, it really is. It's a people's court. And while we don't throw the rules of evidence and procedure out the door, we also kind of mushy it around a little bit to facilitate the citizen. But by the same token, we don't allow abuse from the standpoint of the introduction of evidence or procedures in the trials. Now these trials, as I stated, go up to $10,000. And as a part of those civil trials, we, of course, get involved in a bunch of ancillary laws. And that includes everything from probate to bankruptcy to, of course, your regular civil law for the state of Texas, and, of course, the procedure laws for justice courts. Now, how does bankruptcy affect it? A suggestion of bankruptcy stops everything from the standpoint of the procedures, or until they get a lift to stay, or a stay lift from the standpoint of a lease agreement. In other words, you're not going to let it sit there in that place rent-free for the rest of your natural life while you jack around in the bankruptcy court. So what you do is you file motions in connection with to lift the stay. And it's pretty easily done. And they agree to go ahead and pay your rent. In the state of Texas, I assure you, the fastest way to get back on your feet is to not pay your rent. And I'm talking about feet walking down the street. From the standpoint of obviously breaching other terms, conditions of the lease, which can include everything, not providing insurance on the tenant, not providing or keeping more people than are authorized, doing criminal activities on the premises, undue noise, which we get into another feature of the penal statute under that as to what is deemed to be an untoward noise, which is 85 decibels in the state of Texas. And the procedure determine how your next door neighbor, dogs, are driving you crazy. Well, because they're barking. And that is to go down to Radio Shack when it's not being robbed and to get a decibel to determine 85 decibels with another witness. These are just the very basic requirements in connection with the handling, modulation of FEDs. Let's talk about quickly the juveniles. The juveniles, even though they have had a severe reduction, I'm sure, and I just had 2 huge dockets last night, yesterday that is, in connection with their moving violations. It seems like my dockets are getting where they can't even sit down in a court. We have 135 authorized people, and we'll have 140 to 150 for moving violations. So that seems to be because parents, be perfectly honest with you, I don't know what's happening, but with a 16-year-old brain getting a 3,000-pound rocket and operating in this particular area, which is a lot. It's a lot for grown people to drive in and stay out of problems, much less for a 16-year-old mind to be operating a piece of equipment at 200 to 300 horsepower, and we expect them to be, I guess, perfect. But by the same token, I'd like to keep them alive, to be taxpayers. But in any event, it's also a really problem from the standpoint of losing a child, and that is what the dissolution of families are. It's a huge percentage, I think it's over 70% of them, that when a child is lost in one of these accidents, it's always, it's your fault, it was your fault, I told you not to do that. And before long, the marriage contract is dissolved. And it's a huge thing. So you not only have the people who were hurt in the accident or killed, or your child, then you have this problem from the standpoint of family dissolution. Juveniles, that covers everything from family code to the criminal code to the educational code, and certainly from the standpoint of, I did say educational. These particular cases have specific, special handling. I want to make sure. Because you don't handle juvenile like I handle you guys, okay? I'm assuming all of you are 17 or above. But for instance, the magistrate, you can't just come in and read them their rights. You've got to do the rights, then they're out. You read them twice to them, believe it or not, before they give a statement, if they're going to give a statement. Then when they come back in, many times with some of these home invasions, it'll take these 6 to 7 hours to finish your juvenile in connection with magistrate, because we have to review their written statement, make any corrections to make sure they understand it. Then I have a litany of questions I must ask. Have you been promised anything? Have you been in any way threatened? Have you this? Have you that? And I must be confirmed, because I guarantee you, if this becomes an issue, who's going to be subpoenaed down here? So it's something I have to be convinced that these juveniles understand what is going on. Forceful entry and detainer. That means being thrown out of your house or your business. And that's for non-payment of rent, failure to comply with the conditions of the lease. That is an extremely testy little area, not only from the real estate side of it, I'm talking about real property code. We also deal in bankruptcy there, and probate company, from the standpoint of whether it's a testate or intestate estate, whether or not you have letters of testamentary, whether or not you have the authority from the bankruptcy court to go forward. Do you own this property? If so, what's the proof? We're also hog wild from the standpoint that we can't go behind at that deed that's presented or ask questions, even when they're obvious. We're specifically disallowed in our jurisdictional to do that, even though I did this for 31 years. But in any event, it's a very narrow issue of as far as determining of ownership of property. The point being that we also have original jurisdiction in forcible entry and detainment. That means they start with us, not county, not district, and we have original jurisdiction. Now, what does that mean? That means there is no limit as far as value is concerned. I told you $10,000. Excuse me. Let me get a little coffee here. $10,000. In the FED, forceful entry and detainer, the biggest one I ever handled was $21 million. And that's where they were trying to evict 3 car dealerships. It was a New York bank that felt that they had violated the terms of confidence and also trust, or out of trust. And I never seen so many 3-piece suits in my court in my life. But in any event, that took 3 days to go through. We covered everything from real estate code and that bankruptcy. We had certain federal jurisdiction issues that had to be brought up. We had to hear testimony from various and sundry people and to make some kind of decision. Believe it or not, my decision was appealed, but it was upheld. So I got lucky on that one. We're talking about a lot of money sometimes. I'm sure it'll be $100 million one day that comes in. And whether or not there's been some kind of violation, and since we have original jurisdiction, district courts will not touch it, federal courts won't touch it, nobody. You take it to the JP. What they're also trying to do, I might throw in, to add to our little basket of fun, is appeals. They tried this 2 different sessions up there, to refer all of your appeals up to $10,000 on tax problems, ad valorem tax. Meaning if you didn't agree with how the evaluation of your house was, or your land, the improvements on the house or otherwise, then that would be brought into the JP court. They tried it twice and didn't make it. But in any event, I assure you, if we get that added to our list, there's going to have to be some increases in JP courts in Precinct 4 in particular. Not only from the population end of it, but from the sheer volume of it. Now, we, as you know, have Precinct 4-2 that is coming open due to the retirement of Judge Tom. And Tom has been in that, I think, for 28 years, if I'm not mistaken, and has done a fantastic job. Tom Court is something that's going to have to take up their share of the load. That's all there is to it. We do 120,000 cases, they do 50,000 cases. So it's a situation that whoever takes that over is going to have to be ready to hit the ground running. Because I've already shifted all of my Cypress cases on juvenile failure to attend directly to Tom. He was gracious enough to take them. So it's a situation that is going to be have to be worked out, and it has no bearing. It's where the police file their cases. I can't make them file in my court. I can't make them file in Tom's court. I can't, you know, it's wherever they want to file it, and that's the way it should be. It's the way it should be, I think. And for convenience sake, or whatever their preference is in connection with the use and benefit of that court. I've already mentioned occupational driver's license hearings. Those are just wonderful. Funny thing, just yesterday, it's funny that he said, well, why don't you tell something funny? And I said, well, there's not too much funny goes on in my court. But I said, yesterday, we did have something funny. It was a forcible injury detainer. And this woman walked up. She looked like, I don't know, 40, 50, I mean 50 or 60. And this woman, younger woman, walks up. And I said, okay, and I'm going through the file. And I said, you're Mrs. So-and-so and you're Miss So-and-so, yes. And you're the landlord and this is the tenant. And I said, I don't see anything on this pleadings that she didn't pay her rent or she's violating the terms of the lease or whatever the case may be. And I said, will you tell me why we're here? You know, for the eviction. And she says, I want her out. I said, well, we don't have banished from the empire provisions in our statutes. Why do you want her out? She's 27 years old and I've been taking care of her and her 4 children as long as I'm going to take care of it. And I went, oh, I understand. Well, have you asked her to leave? You cannot believe how many times I've asked her to leave. I asked her, I said, well, ma'am, do you have a place to go? Well, my husband's working on that. Oh, the husband's been living there too? No, he lives with his mother. So we had the father and the mother living with their mothers. And finally this one had said, time out, you're out. So she said, well, she'll give you 30 days, I'll move out. I said, well, okay, I'm going to enter this and we'll go from there. I don't know whether I can go there or not. Also, I'd like to mention to you real quick that, and I think my time is probably up. I can't read it. Is that 9:30, 9:25? We're going to take questions here in just a minute. Not only the administration, the hiring and firing policies of the court, but also the education of the people, the court ruling policy rules. Also, the judge is required to do budget hearing, and that's where he goes before the budget committee and or commissioner's court to frankly substantiate their budget or the increase or decrease. Very few decreases. Also, judicial education. We are required to do 15 hours of judicial education. In as much as I'm an attorney, then there's more hours. However, since I'm over 70, I don't have to do the CLE anymore. That's not because I'm so smart. They just don't think I can find a place. But in any event, the extra duties that I have in this county and will be required of various JPs is you are assigned to committees. Mine is security for the various JP courts, 16 courts in Harris County. Security from for not only personnel but for the judge, and we have done some good there. Also, legislation liaison. I'm a liaison with Austin in connection with the county JP courts, and that takes a certain amount of time. Public appearances, which I love, and working with the constable, which is another great opportunity, and from our IT that we're coming into. I wouldn't say the 21st century, but we're coming into the 20th century, at least from the standpoint of paperless courts. So in substance, it's a fantastic job. It's a very demanding job, and it's something you show better want. Because once you get in there, it is totally time consuming, and it's going to be a learning curve for anybody. I practiced law for 31 years. I had a very successful law firm before I sold it. But I guarantee you it was hump and scratch to get up to speed from the standpoint of a JP. My friend Fred Wendish over here offered to coach me many times because he knows everything. But no, I've had great friends, a lot of people helping, really and truly. And that's what it takes to get this particular job done. Now, any questions? Don't overwhelm me. I think her hand went up first.
I don't know if the question should be directed to you, but I wanted to know what is the division of responsibility between a sheriff and a constable?
What is the responsibility?
The division of responsibility.
The division responsibility. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Sheriff?
I'll tell you what, we'll sidebar and get with you after the deal.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Thank you.
May I
No,
also-
I don't mind.
Is that just because you're better looking, Herman?
May I also suggest that we had that meeting here, and I have it on video. If you'll give me your email address, you'll get an hour of it.
Wonderful. Yeah, okay.
My question was, you're doing this with 33 people. If I remember right, weren't there as many as 60 people in there just maybe 10 years, 11 years ago?
Not that I know of.
Oh,
No, not
40,
me.
there were 40.
No, there were, I think at one time with HN there was 53 or 54.
I was thinking.
And,
I think when you first took over, Judge, we had 50 to 53 employees.
Well, you were there long enough.
And it's amazing
Earlier
that you
than I
can accomplish this with 33 people.
Well, I tell you what, when they're, and they're bright, and like I say, when I came in, longevity is important, but it wasn't seminal. And if you couldn't do the job, you're not getting it. That's all there is. So, but I certainly offer, and any instruction or free instruction that we possibly can. Yes, sir.
Realizing how busy you are, I've heard that there's a potential of moving the Cypress Wood Annex to Kirkendall 1960. Is that moving along or is it not?
No, that's dead.
Really?
I would have liked to seen that happen. And it's really, I'm not heartbroken, but I just want something, because the constables, the sheriff's department, they have nowhere to park around that courthouse. And let me make sure, I want to be full disclosure. That courthouse is probably better than most of the courthouses, except we've got two brand new ones. I got to admit, is better than most of them you find in Harris County, mainly because our roof doesn't leak, or the doors haven't fallen off, or otherwise. But I'm not going to sit here and with two-face say, oh, it's a horrible place, It's adequate, okay, and it doesn't leak, and the air conditioning works most of the time. So I'm not going to. What I'm saying, I'm going to sit here and believe to you, Fred, that we've got terrible. Even though we don't have anything close to the Taj Mahal that you have over there. But in any event, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a little bit disappointed because I think that would be a super crime deterrent with all the cop cars parked in the parking lot.
Absolutely.
Room for the county folks to do their jobs, and I'm a little disappointed that it didn't make
It had some great attributes. It really did. We had enough room to put a lot of services in connection with juveniles. We thought there was enough room for the sheriffs and the constable and the public. But I tell you what, I'll tell you, I don't think it's confidential. What they're looking at very, very seriously, and I'm told that it's a done deal on the land, and that's 300 acres. That a lot of it they already own on, excuse me, going at 2920 Boudreaux Road, back up in somewhere. I don't know where it is. But,
Forest and Boudreaux.
Sorry?
Champion Forest and Boudreaux.
Oh, Champion Forest and Boudreaux. Okay, all right, so I was wrong. 300 acres, and they're talking about a campus there that would not only include a courthouse, but the commissioner has promised me that we would have a minimum of 2 courtrooms, which we need terribly, and possibly 3, so we could bring in other JPs to handle cases. Now let me explain real quick, and you as the public need to know this, because it's your dollars, okay, that is paying for all this. Even though the JP courts, I think the only ones that make a profit, period. I'll guarantee you our budget is $2 million, or there a bit less. We brought in $7 million. So we're the only profit-making type of operation. But there are other JPs in Harris County that I don't think, it's not anything personal, or that they're slackers or not doing their job. But some of them don't have 7,000 cases a year. They get paid the same. They get new courthouses. What is strange about this is down in the hinterlands, which, the whole city, of course, is going to be booming. From where I came from, the East End, bless their heart, I love them. They're great judges. But they just don't get any filings because they're in the city of Houston, many of them. So they are filed in municipal court, not in JP court. But we continue to pay for, handle these particular JPs, all the same amount of money. And they handle less than 10,000 cases, some of them a year. And it's not trying to be a political argument for me, but from the standpoint, that's why if we do get a courthouse, and what I think we ought to have is 3 courts in Precinct 4. I've maintained that from the first day I was there. There ought to be one over on 249 that would actually have joint jurisdiction with Precinct 5 and 4. And take care of that Cypress area, which is huge, and it's getting huger. Is that a word? And then we would be in the middle, and then Tom's court would be on the far side of Precinct 4. Y'all realize we're right at, if not crossed, 1 million people in Precinct 4? So when I run for office, it's like running for a governor in certain states that don't even have our population. So it's a situation that should be very concerning, because this is usually probably 95% of the only time a citizen has anything to do with the jurisprudence system. Hopefully, unless they get divorced or otherwise. But so the JP court is a real necessity. It really is. It's something that needs to be resolved, finalized, but I tell you, the last time we tried to reduce the JP courts in these lesser, what was it, 10 or 11 years, they were in federal court over that one. Voter registration, discrimination, some of the dumbest things in the world. I'm sorry, I'm a practical person, and if we don't need you anymore, you know, in your particular area of selling widgets, sir, then we're not going to fire you. I'm going to move you, okay, to where you can be useful, and move you or reduce the number. But that's not in government's thinking. I'm sorry. And that is to look at and see if it is still practical. And I am told that I have had the time. And is there a final question? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know,
First of all, bless your heart. You're on the board of trustees of Spring Independent School District. You need a blessing.
Church Adams is my neighbor. In your efforts, you know, in the business model type of operation, when you, you know, create efficiencies, do those efficiencies create some deficiencies?
Deficiencies?
Yes.
I think that's the very essence of improvement, isn't it?
Well, do the deficiencies outweigh the efficiencies, though? Say like you had 30 some odd people on your staff, and they just mentioned it used to be 50 or 60, something like that. So, does that create a logjam in your operation, or
No.
say like, you know, law enforcement had cutbacks, so we have less officers on the street?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. Is it means that we have less cases? No. As far as how it came about and how are you just working these people and they change to their death and they don't go home for 6 days? No. Like I say, training and pay. It's amazing. If you pay people a realistic salary, they value that. That's pretty simplistic, okay? But you got to show me that you know what you're doing and that you're efficient in things. It's as simple as that. But I'm sorry, you probably know that governmental thinking normally is just to throw some more people in there. You know, if we have a problem, it must be a lack of people. Well, it isn't, as far as I'm concerned, in my particular little world. So it's worked out. Also the use of computers. That court was the first one that ever had a computer. Bless his heart, H.N. McElroy introduced it without the knowledge of downtown. And they went crazy when they found out about it. And he already had it for years. Just to keep up with various, you know, basic database. That's all he used it for. That's all it was capable of at that time. And now we're into paperless court situation. And we've already done it in the criminal. So real quick, when they write a ticket and they're sitting in the car behind you and they're putting in information, that information before he leaves that scene has already come to our office. We have the Kappas, and that Kappas is going to be set for a hearing in a matter, or he many times writes the date for the hearing, you know, to come in and give your plea, guilty or not guilty. But that's instantaneous. Before, they had to accumulate them, they had to bring them in, they had to count to them, they had to do schedules of them. It was just a mess. DPS, bless their heart, love them, but they would accumulate them in their trunk. And sometimes we had Kappas and warrants issued that had already been paid. And the problem was, I don't think you're going to be real thrilled when you're thrown across the hood of a car on a warrant when they stop you for speeding, when you'd already taken care of whatever that problem had been. But the warrant was still outstanding. That was one thing that hit me, one of the first things when I took office, was these warrants being outstanding. So we went through and purged most of those and started over. But bless their heart, like I say, we had a couple of DPS officers that we told the sergeant, he went out and started examining his car and found it in the wheel well. So, but they had no computers, it was all paper, and trying to keep up with all this stuff. They're out there chasing these characters up and down the highway, so I can understand, but I don't know how it got to the wheel well, but anyway. I don't know if I answered your question or not. Did I?
Oh, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.